Welcome to Build. I'm so thrilled to have with me today Ali Stroker from Spring Awakening on Broadway, Glee, the Glee Project, and we're going to find out a brand new project she's working on. I'm Laura Haywood. Welcome, Ali Stroker.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here. I saw you in Spring Awakening on Broadway 4 times.
I can't believe that. That's amazing.
There's a reason they call me Broadway Girl. Spring Awakening is probably my favorite musical of the last 15 years. I saw the original almost 20 times. So, and I will say actually that I thought it seemed pretty soon for a revival.
Yeah, definitely.
But you were part of this groundbreaking new way of making musical theater. Let's dive right in. Can you talk about the Deaf West production of Spring Awakening?
Yes. So the revival was with a company called Deaf West, and half of the actors in the cast were deaf and half were hearing. And the deaf actors played the lead roles, and they signed and acted while their counterpart, their pair, basically, voiced all of the lines and the songs for them. So for the audience, it was such an inclusive experience because you could be a deaf audience member or a hearing audience member and get the entire show, which is so unique for the deaf community.
I've been to shows where there have been interpreters off to the side, but this time the signing was really, the language was part of the choreography.
Yeah.
And it was like nothing I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
It was not designed originally to come to Broadway, right? It was a tiny production in Los Angeles.
That's right. So a year before we opened on Broadway, we did a small black box production in downtown LA. And I always say, you never think you're going to go to Los Angeles to get your first Broadway show, ever. And then here we were doing this small production that then producers came to see, and we did a bigger production at the Wallace Annenberg in Beverly Hills. And then like a few weeks later, we got an email from our producers being like, we're opening on Broadway in 3 months. And I like sobbed.
Were you out of the country when you got that email?
Yes, I was in South Africa with no internet. And one morning I was like, God, I have to check my email to find an email being like, hey, you're going to Broadway. I was like, this is not real.
I always like to talk to performers about their origin stories, sort of how they got the bug. And you decided pretty early on that you were going to be on Broadway despite the differently abledness. Do you like differently abled, disabled, wheelchair bound?
Great question.
What adjectives should we be using?
So when I talk about disability, I use the language disability because it's just commonly known, but I like to identify as being differently abled because dissing my abilities feels so wrong. I'm like, wait a minute, I can diss many things. What? Why would I diss my abilities? So I like to identify as being differently abled, but when I talk about disability, I always use language that is a little bit more mainstream.
Tell everybody about your theatrical debut playing Annie.
Okay, so when I was 7, my family bought a house down on the Jersey Shore, and we had next door neighbors who had 3 kids, and their oldest daughter had just come home from Stage Door, which is like a big theater camp in the Berkshires, and she came home and she was like, I am going to direct a production of Annie. She was 12, and it was going to go up in our backyard at the end of the summer, and she cast me as Annie. She cast our golden retriever as Sandy. She cast her little sister as Molly, and she cast my dad as Miss Hannigan. And he did the role in full drag at the end of the summer. And it was, I always say, it was when I remember my life beginning. Because before Annie, the identity of just being a little girl in a wheelchair didn't feel good. And I felt like the world looked at me and felt badly for me. And then I had this experience of being on stage and people were looking at me and they didn't feel bad for me. They were listening to the story I was telling and they admired my ability to sing and act and dance. And that was the kind of attention I wanted. And so that was like, oh my God, I found my purpose. This feels so empowering. And I also talk about how it was really exciting to feel like I knew how to play any character because there were days that playing Allie was just too much and it was like too intimidating or I felt shy or I felt like I couldn't move forward at school. And so to put on cowboy boots one day and feel like Annie Oakley was giving me some power felt amazing. I just turned into such a theater buff and it really changed my life.
Are you still in touch with that neighbor who took a chance on a girl in a chair playing Annie?
Yes, I am. She is an incredible designer. She's a fashion designer. Her name's Rachel Antonoff. You may know her. And her brother is Jack Antonoff, who is the lead singer of Bleachers. So they are a very talented and loving and giving family that, thank goodness, we're still in touch. And they still live next door to us at the beach.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I feel like I can imagine a production of Annie, a professional, like a Broadway production with Annie in a chair.
I know, be cool.
It's the idea of Annie is that she's this kid who, she's scrappy and, kind of nobody wants that kid. And the layers of having her be differently abled could really, put a different kind of understanding on that script. And that's one of the things that Spring Awakening did as well. It wasn't just a translated show, but there was this historical precedent for the era in which the play happened, where deaf people were being criminalized. Yeah. And I love a show that can change the way it's cast to actually change the way that the audience can understand the content.
Yeah, and in my experience, I have found that disability has been able to heighten the story that we're telling. It doesn't take away. And for a long time I was afraid, I'll never get cast. This is not, being in a chair is not something, not a story that people want to tell, because growing up, watching TV, going to shows and going to the movies, I never saw anybody who looked like me. And that's a huge motivation for me now, because my community deserves to have role models that are in the media, that are out there, so that little kids who want to be performers or who have any dreams see that, it's possible. It's possible to be in a wheelchair and fall in love. And there's a love story on TV or whatever it might be, or it's possible to achieve my dreams. And I didn't have that. So that is a huge motivation for me.
I've heard you say that if you had the chance to walk, you wouldn't.
Good question. So I have been hurt. I was in a car accident when I was 2 years old, and I don't have any memory of walking. I don't have any memory of moving around like maybe you would. So the idea of changing my life so much and being able to walk is really kind of scary to me. Like, what would that be like to walk down the street? And I love my life so much, and I feel like my chair has opened up so many doors and allowed me to connect with so many people. But I say, no, I really would not want to walk. That's not what's on my mind. But if there was an opportunity where somebody was like, hey, take this pill and you're going to get up and walk, I think I would be so curious to be like, what is that? It's like, what is it like to walk onto the beach? Like, what is that? Because I've got my beach wheelchair.
You do?
Yeah. Oh,
What is that like?
It's like a wheelchair with balloon tires, and I call it my tractor because it's kind of big. But my dream is this summer, and this is for anybody watching, anyone who knows how to build an electric chair that goes on sand. It needs to have treads, but I want to build one so that I can get up to the beach on my own, because I've never been able to do it, because these chairs, I can't push myself, like somebody else has to push it. So that's one of my dreams, is that I want to have a beach wheelchair that like is maybe hot pink and like has like a motor on that goes onto the.
Oh my gosh! I knew we were kindred spirits. I'm obsessed with hot pink.
Like a Barbie beach chair.
That's something about that story. I don't know whether it's about the idea of what it would feel like to walk on sand, or whether it's the idea of you on the beach. But it reminded me, when you were first doing theater, wasn't part of your world from Little Mermaid your audition song?
Oh yeah. Always.
I mean,
always,
what a
always.
perfect.
I think I even sang it in college, and I had a moment of like, Allie, no more, put it to bed. But I love Part of Your World, and I relate to it, because you take it out of the context of a mermaid, and I don't know, I really relate to that song. So, that song was very special to me for a long time, and I have a recording of me singing it when I was 11.
I hope you will be tweeting that later this afternoon, because everybody wants to see it. Put it on YouTube.
Good idea.
Speaking of seeing you on screen, you made an appearance on Glee after being the third runner, or coming in third on the Glee project, Glee's reality show. you had some hesitation about doing reality TV.
Yes. So after I graduated college, I auditioned for Glee, and I waited 3 years and didn't hear anything back from casting. And I was like, wait a minute, this is my show. Like, there's somebody already in a chair on the show. Why can't I do the show? And it was when Glee was like blowing up, and then the Glee project began to be advertised on Facebook, and so I was.
Wasn't it MySpace? Didn't you audition through MySpace?
I put my audition video on MySpace.
Amazing.
Which is so good. It captures that moment so well.
All you have to do is say the word, and people are transported to a different era.
Yeah. So when I first heard about the Glee project, I was nervous about it because reality TV. I had just come out of NYU, and I sort of had this attitude of like, I have too much training, like I'm an actress, and not really able to see that this was an opportunity leading to another opportunity. And the Glee project actually was the perfect situation for me because anywhere I go, there's some curiosity about my chair and my story. And so on reality TV, you get to tell your personal story. And it was the kind of show that was really encouraging and, highlighted the underdog. And I got to sing and act and dance on the show. So it was really the best of all worlds. I got to tell my story and then perform on TV for 10 weeks.
I think
cool.
The idea that you are a dancer, after having seen you perform on television and on stage, now it's so obvious to me. Even just the way that you move around the world in your chair feels very dance-y. But I think that for a lot of people, the idea of someone who's paralyzed from the chest down being a dancer doesn't compute.
Yeah.
Can you talk about becoming a dancer and realizing that you could be one?
Yeah, well, the dance world is so much about your ability with your body. And if somebody sees a body that's limited, they think, oh, how does that work? But the truth is that when you don't have ability with a certain part of your body, your other abilities become heightened. So the way that I move my hands, the way that I move my arms is my own language because I have to use them for so much more. I use my hands and my arms to get in and out of the shower. You know what I mean? And so all of that, and so my mom always said, oh, Allie, you're so graceful because of your experience of being, in a chair. And I also think that when you live your life on wheels, there's like this new kind of vocabulary and language because you glide. You know what I mean? It's not choppy like walking or running. It's sort of this like really amazing movement, like as if you're gliding across ice. So yes, when I first started dancing, I remember being really intimidated because all the dance classes, a lot of the time, were about your feet and your legs. And when I got to NYU and started taking ballet class, we'd spend hours at the bar. And everyone's doing tendus, and I'm like, how in the world am I going to do tendus? And tendus is when you like point your foot, right?
Yeah, so thank you. I was going to ask you to clarify.
And so I just started using my hands and finding other vocabulary, and it really worked to my ability because it was also a huge lesson in translation. So with movement, I translate everything. So if the choreography is step touch, okay, how am I going to step touch in my chair? Well, wheelchairs don't move side to side. Cool. We know that. Let's not fight it. Okay, but I can move my upper body, and like, what is it like to move my shoulders in that way? And I don't really have my core, so do I want to hold on to my wheels and create that movement? Or is it more important to be doing the hand and the snap, So I've learned to translate, and then I was on a wheelchair dance team with a bunch of girls in chairs. And that was so cool to be in a room where everyone was moving the same way. I didn't have to translate. But then it was also really difficult because I couldn't make it my own. I kind of had to do what everyone else was doing. So, I feel really fortunate to have had all those experiences because I think that really owning how you move when you're in a wheelchair is so important. And even just today, like in an interview or in a situation where you just have to be present and hold your body up. If you have a disability, you've got all these things in your head about how do I look, how do I move, can I do this, can I do that, how are people going to perceive me? And it's so nice to be at ease with your body.
Mm-hmm. I wondered about, you mentioned not having core strength, but when I think about vocal training, I feel like the diaphragm and the core strength is so important. You have this powerhouse voice. How does your paralysis affect your ability to project your voice in that way?
Yeah. When I first started singing, it was never about the technique. It was always about expressing something. And I got really good at imitating, which I think is how a lot of people learn to sing. It's like, oh, I'm going to imitate Andrea McArdle from Annie, and I want my voice to sound like hers. And
I'm so tempted to ask you to do some impressions right now.
Yeah, I bet you are. No, but so it was never about technique. And then when I started taking lessons, my teachers, we did a lot of visualization. Okay, imagine that your ribs are expanding. You know, I mean, I literally am paralyzed from here down. So it's like, okay, I'm going to visualize this, because to engage that and make that happen becomes really fuzzy. But what is cool is your breath and breathing. I don't have any trouble breathing, thank goodness. That once you start to breathe, it connects everything for you. So all of this work that we feel like we have to do to sing, it's actually just like all like not true. You know, if you're really connected to your breath. And I also wear a brace that helps me sit up straight, and I use it kind of as my core. I call it my corset, but because why not? And so when I breathe, I can feel my body against it, just the pressure of it. I don't feel my skin, but I feel the pressure of it, and that reminds me, okay, good, you're getting a good breath. And we used to find tricks with like my mouth, like breathing and feeling cool air hit the back of your throat, and that is the sign of getting a really big deep breath. So there were all these tricks that we came up with, and then more than anything for me, it was just about expressing something, and I had a lot to express.
Yeah.
And still do, obviously. I am not shy, but this was really my outlet. Singing became my outlet.
Mm-hmm. I think that my favorite quote that I've read from you is when you said that being in a chair was the perfect preparation for showbiz.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. My experience of being in a wheelchair when I was younger is that I wasn't always included in things. And I don't think it was ever like intentionally mean or nasty. It was just like, oh, she can't do that. But for a kid, and I was very aware socially and emotionally, very in touch with what was going on, it was obviously really hurtful. And so I became an expert at flipping negative situations into something positive. And so when I wasn't included, I'd be like, okay, that's right, I wasn't supposed to do that anyway. I'm going to go find something else to do. And my parents also had a really positive outlook, and we were very determined to not look at what I couldn't do, but what I could. And so I just want to share this little piece, because my dad is a motivational speaker, and he and I do speaking gigs now together, and we do this thing, or we share this equation. It's E plus R equals O. E plus R equals O. The events of our life plus the response equals the outcome. The events of our life we never have control over, but our response we have 100% control over. So if we can get a hold of our responses to things, like being excluded, like feeling like you don't belong, like you don't have purpose or whatever, if we can get control of how we feel about those events, then the outcome we have 50% control over, which I love. I'm always reminded of that. Mm-hmm. And in this industry, because so often you don't have any control as an actor. You go in, you do your best, and you hope that you get the job. But you don't, that is it. So, and you never know where the opportunities are going to be coming from and how they're coming your way. So, so I've always felt my chair was like, made me tough and made me positive and optimistic and forced me to become confident in who I was. And so it's really helped me.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
You have a brand new opportunity on television. How much of it are you allowed to talk about at this point? Because I know it's really, really new, but I want to know everything.
Okay. Well, I would love to tell the story about how it came about.
Sure.
I was just recently out in Orange County doing a program called Performing with the Pros at Orange County High School for the Arts. And I worked with their kids, and we created a show. And I was out there the first week, and then I came home for the weekend. And when I was home, I got a call from my managers and my agent saying, hey, there's this opportunity that might come your way.
Is that all they said?
And they gave me a little bit more detail about it. And I was like, okay, what do you do with that? Like, it's Friday afternoon. Like, does that mean it's happening? And it was, and I was like, okay, well, should I expect sides and a script, like to put myself on tape? What's going on? And they were like, no, they're just pitching you for this new TV show. And I was like, okay. and I have also experienced in the past 8 years since I graduated that people get really excited, but then to actually follow through and do it is a whole other thing. Mm-hmm. So the next week, I got a call. I was sitting getting my hair highlighted. I had like a full head of foils sitting in front of the mirror, and my managers called and they were like, we want you to know that ABC just approved you for a new drama called 10 Days in the Valley, starring Kara Sedgwick, and for a recurring role. And I was like,
so this is something you did not audition for?
No, I didn't audition for it. I didn't test for it. And as an actor, you learn that the way you get a TV show is you usually do like 5 auditions, like call back, and then you test for the network. And then sometimes you test again for another network that the network's under or whatever. And it was just like, what is happening? And they were like, but it's not completely confirmed. We have to get it in writing. So another like, what's happening? And so then they sent all the details to my agents and my managers, and it was confirmed. And then 2 weeks later, I shot the first day, and it was so wild. And I had been wanting this kind of opportunity of a recurring role on a TV show. I did one episode of Glee, and I did 1 or 2 episodes of the show called Faking It on MTV, and I had done some children's TV, but I'd never had like a role where like there could be storylines and relationships and connections. And so it happened, and I'm gonna be on a bunch of the episodes. It's picked up for 10 episodes so far.
Wow.
And so that's how it came about.
I read the character breakdowns, and I noticed that your character, is it Tamara?
I think it's Tamara.
Tamara. It does not mention in her character breakdown that she's in a chair.
No, and okay, so this is something else I'd like to chat with you about.
Of course.
So there is this huge thing right now, or at least huge for me, where a lot of TV shows want to be inclusive to people with disabilities. They're like, oh, we want this on our show. But sometimes the writing reflects the idea of somebody with a disability. Like they're writing for somebody who has a disability. And often I'll get the script and I'm like, this is not at all how it goes. Like, I don't spend every day of my life talking about being in a wheelchair. I don't. It's like not that interesting after a while. And so when I got cast on this show, they were writing this role with me in mind, and I was so excited, and it was so refreshing to learn that the chair was not the first thing of like, I play a writer in a wheelchair. It's like not that important to them. I think that it will come up in my storyline at some point, but it was so refreshing to feel like it didn't have to lead with that. And I think that that's a huge breakthrough, and I'm so happy that ABC is doing this and really getting on board with creating these characters that are going to resonate with so many people. I mean, the disabled community is the largest minority in the world, but it's the least represented. So I'm just thrilled about that.
I'm thrilled about it too.
Thank you so much.
We have time for a couple of questions from the audience
Okay,
if you're
cool.
up for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey.
Hey.
So I saw that, I read that you studied and performed at the Paper Mill Playhouse. I've been to a few of the shows there, and it's amazing. I was wondering what that was like for you.
Yeah. So when I was a teenager, they have a program called Rising Stars, and I did their high school program. So it was like a summertime camp kind of thing. And as a teenager, I was like, oh my God, I would love to perform here professionally. And then a year after I graduated, I did Spelling Bee. And it's so cool because that stage has so much history. When you're on that stage, you feel like there's been so many great performers here, and the theater's so gorgeous.
And it's huge.
It's huge. It's huge.
Bigger than most of the Broadway houses.
I know. It's just a real gem. And I am a Jersey girl. I grew up there. So it's so cool to be able to be performing out in Jersey and doing this show and coming back to a place that I, was taught and learned how to be a performer. So it was really special, really, really cool experience.
Do we have another question?
Hi, Allie.
Hey.
I was wondering if, besides Spring Awakening, are there any other productions that you dream of being a part of?
Great question. So my dream, as far as another theater, musical theater production would be to originate a role in an original show, because there are so few characters in musical theater that have disabilities and that are in chairs. And I think it'd be so cool to create that character and know that it lives and exists, and that story will be told over and over again. But again, like I was talking about earlier about translating, I think there are a lot of opportunities to take roles. And why not? Why couldn't Sister Mary Robert in Sister Act be in a wheelchair? You know what I mean? But to take, but to set a role, a character from the beginning, that this is her truth. This is how she rolls.
Literally.
I've
been avoiding it, but I can't anymore.
There's so many puns.
I know.
So many puns.
Just the idea of a role model.
Oh yeah, the whole thing.
But I'm sure you hear that a million times a day. But
the other night, my boyfriend and I were having some people over for dinner, and we were talking about hilarious memoir titles. Role model, Sitting Pretty or whatever.
Well, there was a little bit of wordplay that was incorporated into the choreography at Spring Awakening.
Yes,
the Mariana Whelan line where you roll across the stage.
Yeah, I mean that character, that was supposed to be her last name.
Yeah, I know.
And in rehearsal, our director, Michael Arden, was like, "Allie, will you be Mariana Whelan?" And I was like, "Sure." Oh my gosh, that's such a great idea! Didn't hit me at first, but
it hit me. I mean, it was a really clever nod to the lyrics, and just one of a million in that production.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, Allie. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. I love Spring Awakening. I love both productions of it, and it was very meaningful for me, growing up as a teen when that originally came out.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm wondering, what was your favorite part of the original production, and then your favorite part of your production?
So the original production, I loved that it was this play that existed so long ago, and then they would whip out the microphones and it would turn into a rock concert. I loved the contrast of that, and it just spoke to me because the story of these kids is the same story that repeats over and over and over again in history, but the music, the rock music, I was just like, this is heaven. I just loved it, and I loved how poetic it was. I loved Duncan Sheik. I think he's a genius. So I loved that about the original. And our version, I loved, very very simply, I loved the sign language. I thought it was so beautiful, and I think sign language is the most beautiful language in the world because it literally is like the shapes and acts out the words, and it's such an amazing way to communicate. And Spring Awakening is all about communication. There's miscommunication everywhere, and to add that layer in was like, oh my gosh. You know, I love to live by the motto, turning your limitations into opportunities. And they were just, that was what that production was about, in my opinion. So so that was my favorite part about the revival, was the signing.
It really feels like an extension of what you were talking about having done since you were a child, using your arms and hands to express yourself in a way that a normally abled person might not.
Exactly.
And you fit into that cast so beautifully, and it's something that will stay with me forever.
Thanks.
And I'm so glad you're going to be coming into my apartment via my TV screen with
Yes.
this new TV show. Do we know when it's going to start?
We don't know when it'll air yet.
But we know there will be at least 10 episodes.
There will be 10 episodes. Kira Sedgwick, me, and it should be a great time. It's a drama, and I will be posting tonight a release, a little bit about who else is in it. So check it out.
Well,
online.
follow Allie everywhere at Allie Stroker.
Thank you.
Allie, thank you for
Thank
rolling
you
into
so
our lives.
much for having me. I loved this. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.